Okay. Welcome everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the Beyond the Screen Risk, Pressures, and Digital Influence. I am Latasha Gaston, the socially savvy mentor, and I am the lead consultant of I Speak for You Now, LLC. And this is part two of our five-part series focused on keeping digital influence at the forefront of how we understand young people. This series exists because the issues are not fading away. Social media is not slowing down. AI is accelerating visibility and access. And whether we talk about it intentionally or not, digital influence is shaping emotion, behavior, identity development every single day. So today is not about panic and it's not about blaming technology, it's about awareness. And to help us understand what's happening, not just socially, but from a school leadership perspective, I'm excited to welcome Michelle Sanders. Michelle works directly with students and families and sees firsthand how digital pressures show up inside buildings, school buildings. So, Michelle, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly and tell us about your work.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Michelle Sanders. I am an assistant principal of K-5 Elementary School. And of course, we're dealing with and serving elementary students. We have a scope of a lot of things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And this topic in particular to online and social media plays a great role in the work that I do as young as our first and second grade students, all the way up to fifth grade. So it's my hope to continue to educate myself in order to support and equip students with the tools that they need in order to have proper digital citizenship as they are exploring the most powerful tool that we have at our fingertips, which is the internet and social media.
Okay, great. So as you can see, she is very pertinent to this conversation for today. And before we go further, I want to show you something. So let's look at this video.
And unfortunately happens to streamers a lot. And finally, the worst one is the blackout challenge, which was trending a few years ago. I don't want to get into this.
Let me start it over. Technology. Hold on.
These are the most dangerous internet trends to ever exist. The Tide Pod challenge was big a couple years ago where people looked at colorful laundry detergents and said, hey, that looks good, let me try that. And the NyQuil chicken challenge was big in 2022, and it's exactly as it sounds, unfortunately, where people would cook their chicken breasts in blue colored NyQuil. And just the fumes alone from cooking NyQuil is dangerous, but eating it is even more dangerous and can even be deadly. So definitely do not do this. The cinnamon challenge started as a joke where you trick your friends into swallowing a spoonful of cinnamon, which sounds easy and fun, but it actually is really hard and immediately dries out your mouth if you do this, and it was almost impossible to swallow. It can actually cause breathing and even lung damage. Swatting is a trend where you do a false emergency report on the person. The SWAT team goes to that person's house, breaks in, arrests them, and inspects the whole entire house, and it's illegal. Definitely should not be doing this, and unfortunately happens to streamers a lot. And finally, the worst one is the blackout challenge, which was trending a few years ago. I don't want to get into this too much to respect the victims, but it was a really big deal. There's multiple lawsuits now involved in it.
Okay. So when we see videos like this, risky challenges, viral trends, public pressure, what are we really looking at? And before we move on, I want to ask you, what concerns you most about digital pressure right now? If you're watching the replay, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Okay. Is it just defiance that we're looking at? Is it just attention seeking, or is it something deeper? So research shows that adolescence, especially ages 10 to 19, is a period for major neurological remodeling. The prefrontal cortex, which governs impulse control and decision making, is still developing. So at the same time, the limbic system, which drives emotional intensity and sensitivity to risk, is highly active. So when we combine developmental brain changes with constant digital exposure, viral visibility, and public identity formation, we get a very different picture than simply kids are just acting out. So we're also seeing rising mental health needs in this group as well. So increased anxiety, we see heightened emotion reactivity, greater exposure to high intensity and digital environments. And this is developmental and it's environmental. So it's a double-edged sword here. So Michelle, from your leadership lens, what are you seeing in schools right now that may be connected to digital pressure?
Well, first, thank you for having me here. And what we're seeing mostly is the developmentally inappropriate content that students are being exposed to. A lot of the TikToks, social media, Instagram accounts, message centers, what's just out in the forefront of them is not appropriate for them developmentally. And from that comes with different peer pressures because they're not mature enough to understand the context. They're not mature enough to understand the emotional toil that comes with that, and how they respond. So, with that, we're seeing a lot of peer pressure related to feeling a sense of belongingness, participating in activities that they wouldn't necessarily participate in, based upon what their peers may think of them. Also, that feeling of being persuaded. And a lot of it, when our younger children, I would say in first and second grade, they have these cliche, catchy phrases that it becomes repeated language, and they're not understanding the content. And of course, it yields out those physical factors of fatigue and being tired, not being present in class. Those are just some of the surface level things that we see in the immediate, but we're still trying to understand the long-term effects of some of the exposure that they're having on social media. But those would be my top four things that I believe that we're seeing predominantly in our schools today.
So pretty much sometimes adults are responding to behaviors without even realize there's a digital context behind it until you start digging for it. So how are these pressures showing? How are these pressures showing up behaviorally in students?
A lot of it is their impulsivity of some of the choices that they're making, meaning that they have a heightened emotional reactivity level towards what they're exposed to. Because again, it goes back to being developmentally appropriate and understanding what they're being exposed to. So, of course, when you are not sure, um, and it's not innate and you've not been trained in understanding the different things, then it becomes impulsive and it's becoming emotional responses. So a lot of times it becomes to be a domino effect of a lot of different negative responses that come from that. Also, with those impulsivity behaviors, it may not just be physical, but it's a copycat style behavior where, I want to be a part of it, so I'm going to do it. And I'm not thinking what are the unintended consequences from that. So there's that lack of empathy at that point because I feel that they're following the pressures of their friends and, with the sharing. And we'll get to that maybe a little bit deeper in a moment. But I feel that a lot of times they're just doing things perfunctory, not even realizing that passing and sharing these messages or sharing these photos or keeping the rumors going, how that is going to affect them. And they're just doing it without even thinking. So those impulsive behaviors, I feel, is what's showing up with some of the pressures that the children are being exposed to.
Okay, so you talk a lot about impulsivity. So are you noticing emotional reactivity or conflict spillover or maybe some shifts in peer dynamics as well?
Absolutely. So a lot of times when they come to the school level, we have to dig very deep. And it's determined that the origin, of course, is something from social media. And from that, the children, we try to isolate and separate to contain so it doesn't spill over and continue. But a lot of it stems from something from a chat room at home or a gaming site at home, and then it comes to school and it spirals out of control to where multiple children and families are involved. And it takes a lot of people resource in order to unpack at of the levels that come to us. It's not something as simple as someone call me a name. I mean, they are, to the point to where they're they're inciting one another to call one another to pass this number on to someone else. Who, at one point, I remember one, if they had the families, they had the grandmother and calling them from private numbers. It's a spiraling effect that multiple participants are involved in.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that impulsive behavior, not thinking, they're just doing without thinking.
Mm-hmm. So then the school day isn't always where the conflicts begin. So you're seeing it happen at home and it's trickling into the school, into their days, and that's where it's surfacing. So then
Absolutely.
what patterns
Absolutely.
are emerging that adults might not fully recognize when it comes to these chats, this social media, and some of the effects that it has on our preteens and teens?
Our and of recognizing that they are exposed to this level of content. Also, the rate in which the rumor or the incident occurs. I mean, it spirals overnight when we have breaks, and then they have extended breaks where the children are on their phones and have access to the internet and social media for longer periods of time. We have things that spiral there. Also, normalizing that they don't understand. Parents are not, I feel, or may not recognize the dark humor or the sarcasm that comes along with some of the topics and um, different exposure that they may have on social media with one another. And a lot of times, what comes across from the upper elementary is a lot of adult level social interactions and contexts and conflicts that they're having, the things that they're saying and trying to manipulate one another. There are adult level, not middle school or high school,
Mm-hmm.
adult style conflicts that dysregulate students emotionally, mentally, and physically. I don't think the parents understand that as we are emotionally mature as adults, we're able to suppress, hide, and put things to the
Mm-hmm.
side, carry on our day. They're children. We're talking the ages of 5 to 11 years old in my grade spans. The children are not maturely able to handle that level of emotional effects. And we try to do the restoratives and things, but it has longer and unintended consequences that parents, I don't believe, are aware of.
Yeah, because that cognitive development is not at that age. They're not really able to handle it at the age that they're at. It
Correct.
becomes an overload for them,
Correct.
so mentally and emotionally. So, what do you think adults may be misunderstanding about what's influencing the students' behaviors?
I believe that it's not just screen time. We hear parents say all the time, I limit their screen time. I limit their screen time. That's fine, but are we monitoring the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Are we
Mm-hmm.
taking into account the social media dynamics that is being shared so easily on platforms that our children, our young adults, they're looking up to different individuals who are famous individuals, well-known individuals who have power and influence? Are you really monitoring the casualness of things? Because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like, you turn on a commercial or you turn on the TV, it's there. You turn on your internet, it's there. You have different ads. Our smartphones are capturing our voices, and next thing you know, you have ads on display. So I believe that parents need to not just monitor the screen time, they need to take a deeper dive of what their children actually are
Mm-hmm.
looking in. Even on YouTube, with the cartoons, sometimes those commercials come up. You don't know what's coming on through those commercials.
Yeah.
So I think it's critical that they have a very keen eye to what their children are exposed to. Also, modeling, it's very easy for us
Mm.
to, as adults, to take a, we're able to handle the social media, but they're watching us. They're watching our every move, and
Mm-hmm.
they're modeling what they see. So therefore, we need to be able to model and be able to show them that this is what responsible internet usage, social media is looking like. Because the pranks that the children see, a lot of the times they say things like, "Oh, it was a prank. It was a joke." Well,
Mm-hmm.
real life. And we need to be able to discriminate the two and understand the consequences that may come thereafter. Also, just I can't reinforce enough, not just removing the devices, but just eliminating that emotional residue from that, because I feel that they need to really have that digital citizenship in order to really understand. And it needs to be explicitly taught. It's not, don't go on that website. They need to know why. They
Right.
need to know what effects that come from that. Because just like we teach, or as an educator, we teach math, science, and reading, we have to be able to teach digital citizenship to where they understand get the context of it, understand how powerful it is and how they can affect others, and have that empathy towards one another so they can diminish and stop the spiral and continuous bullying, peer pressures, and all of those different things. Um, so I would just say those are just some of the most critical points that I can think about as parents
Mhm.
forward to make this shift to a positive outcome for our young adults.
I completely agree. And I like how you brought up the digital citizenships that could be taught. Because one of the biggest shifts that we can make as adults is moving from what's wrong with them to what might be influencing them, right? Because it's not always just defiance. It's not always just they have an attitude and they just lack discipline. Sometimes the behavior we're responding to is downstream effect of something that started online. Okay. So I want to offer a few grounded shifts that we can begin with
Absolutely.
as adults. So, first, we can increase awareness before increasing the punishment. When conflict happens, we can ask, did anything happen online before this? Because sometimes that's where it stems from. And sometimes we don't ask that question, and just bringing it out, letting the kids know that we are aware that you have this part of your life that affects you, and we want you to be able to talk about it. So opening up that space to do so. A second thing I would say would be to normalize conversations about digital pressure, not just at home, but in classrooms, in schools, in organizations where kids, teens are involved in. So instead of only talking about when something goes wrong, we can ask regularly, what's trending right now? What's happening in your feed? What are kids talking about online? Because when we open up those spaces, kids will start to talk when they feel comfortable enough, when they feel like they're not going to necessarily get in trouble, but the adults in their lives are helping them ground where they are, they're more likely to open up. A third thing I would say would be delay reaction, increase curiosity. So before discipline, gather all the context. And you mentioned that how you all kind of do the investigating, so to speak, and find out the underlying context before you actually give that disciplinary action. Because sometimes what looks like defiance is oftentimes can be embarrassment. It can be something that they're ashamed of and they want to hide, or they're reacting because of that. It could be something that looks like disrespect, and they could be publicly humiliated, and it followed them into the school. So just raising awareness of that. And then another one is what you mentioned was create consistent spaces for discussion. So this could be during an advisory period, after school programs, parent conversations, staff awareness training. And then you also mentioned modeling digital behaviors with adults, balancing adults, showing that they're able to balance screen time as well, because young people are watching how we engage with our own devices. You brought up that very valid point. And these are not just quick fixes, but we need to make these intentional shifts in order for us to see the teens make the shifts as well. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add before we get ready to end the conversation?
No, I think you hit everything on the head. I think continuous educating ourselves, our youth, continuously monitoring and empowering them that the internet is not going away, social media is not going away. It's the best way to get mass communication out to lots of people within seconds. So it's a very powerful tool. We just need to equip our youth and knowing how they can be responsible with it. And I believe all of the different categories and opportunities that we have to make that shift is present in the work as we lead our youth to higher.
Right. And if you are catching the replay, type in the chat, what parts of today's conversation stood out to you the most? So at I Speak for You Now, our work focuses on creating structured spaces where these conversations can happen safely. So through the Socially Savvy Teen Program, digital wellness workshops, we have our summer digital detox retreats, and parent and educator conversations where we open up these spaces where not only the teens are having the conversations, but parent and educators are too, because it's important that the kids are well-rounded in this social media arena. So we partner with schools and community organizations to strengthen what's already in place. So we're not here to replace your systems. We're here to support and reinforce them, especially in areas that often go unspoken. This is part 2 of our series. And if today's conversation resonates with you, we would love for you or your members of your team to join our upcoming sessions and explore how this conversation and I Speak for You Now might support the work you're already doing with your youth and your families, because these issues are not going away. So the question becomes, will we keep the conversation visible? So as we close today, I want to invite you to stay connected with us. If this conversation resonated with you, if it sparked reflection, or even if it raised more questions, that's exactly why this series exists. You can connect with us at www.ispeakforyounow.org to learn more about our upcoming sessions, the work that we do, and the partnership opportunities that are available. These are some of our sessions that we have coming up. It's the last Saturday of every month up until May. So we have March 28th, the breaking point, when teens are emotionally maxed out. April 25th is constant exposure and the comparison spiral. Because we know sometimes the kids like to compare themselves to others, but how can we support them in showing up authentically as themselves and being confident in their own skin, even when social media gives them a different picture? And then on May 30th, we'll end it with disconnected in a hyper-connected world. How can we engage in activities that are not online? That's very important. So if you'd like to continue the conversation directly, you can reach me at LatashaG@ispeakforyounow.org. You can also follow along on social media. At Instagram, I am, I am the Socially Savvy Mentor. On Facebook, you can reach me at I Speak for You Now. And on LinkedIn, I am the Socially Savvy Mentor. So we believe these conversations should not just live in isolation. They should grow in schools, homes, and community spaces. If this aligns with the work that you're already doing, we would truly love to explore how we might collaborate and strengthen those efforts together. Thank you for being present with us and for being engaged, and most importantly, for continuing to show up for our young people. And Michelle, thank you for lending your leadership voice to this space.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you all. Stop sharing. All right.